Jack, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Hi Ed, thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. A little bit cold here in Singapore because it's raining outside, but yeah, all is good.
Yeah, you told me just before this podcast started, it was a little bit cold, and I was like, I didn't know that Singapore actually got cold, but you're talking about rain, air conditioning combined
Yes,
together, not a good combo.
yes, definitely.
Jack, we've been talking to each other for a pretty long time now. I feel like the last 6 years or more is where we first got connected on Instagram. We've never actually met each other.
Yep.
I followed your journey from far from a really long time. I've kind of tagged you in a lot of things, and you've tagged me a lot of things. You've always, shared. I think we have very shared philosophies and values and ideas around training and coaching that we've all always like gone back and forth on over the years. So I'm really, really excited to have you on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Who are you? Where are you?
So I'm Jack and I'm from Singapore. So for myself, I'm a fitness coach and I specialize in hardstyle kettlebell training and also a bit of calisthenics as well. So for me, I run a business called Metamorfitus. It's quite a handful. It's quite a mouthful. So what it actually means is it comes from 3 words: metamorph, fit, and also us. So metamorph, basically, whoever that steps through our gym, we want them to change, to transform, to become fitter, and also to be part of a bigger community which supports each other and uplifts each other. So that's how we came about with the name. For us, we also started out in 2017. So definitely when we connected about 6 years ago, that was when I actually started. So right after university, I started this, and I was on 4 wheels as well, just like how Coastal started. I followed your journey and what you mentioned about how Coastal started. So we also started out on wheels, and we transport all our equipment from our storage area all the way to our training ground. We set it up, and then we train, and after that, we collapse everything, bring it back. And over the years, we are fortunate to actually manage to find a space within an urban farm setting. We designed and then we built the kind of gym that we wanted. And since 2020, we have been training there till now. So yes, that's what we've been doing.
Was your dream always to be a coach, Jack?
Since not when I was young, but when I was studying in university, I actually started dabbling more into fitness, and eventually around year 3, I was teaching part-time with a fitness startup. And after that, I told myself that, hey, this is something that I really like to do. All the while I've been quite passionate about fitness, and why not trying to turn this into a career. So right after university, I started Metamorfitus, and then I haven't looked back since. So yeah.
I love it. I'm actually really surprised to hear that 2016, when we first connected, was your first entry into the fitness market. And the reason it surprises me is I feel like a lot of your philosophies on coaching and training are very mature. I don't mean that in a patronizing way, but I mean it in a way that a lot of the way that you coach people and the things that you talk about on your social media often come from kind of years in the game, like trying all the other stuff and then figuring out, oh, actually there's a lot of distraction, a lot of noise out there, but the simple stuff is kind of what works. So where does your knowledge on strength and conditioning and training come from?
Actually, for myself, all the while, when I first started training, okay, so I came from a cross-country background and endurance background. So the concept of periodization actually isn't very foreign to me. We have the idea of doing the aerobic base building, then after, transiting into your sharpening phase. And then from there, we taper and go for competitions. So when I looked at it from a training perspective for, let's say, for kettlebell and for strength, even for calisthenics, more or less some of these things will apply. So I think the early onset of some of the concepts that we discussed together was linear periodization. So that I actually adopted those approaches into how I actually train for the kettlebell and also for the bodyweight stuff as well. And eventually from there, I started training on my own first before I teach someone else. So I think that is important in the sense that, you have the experience and you record down the experience so that, when you are teaching someone else, you know how to apply this concept. So right now, even now I have coaches on board with me, I usually tell them like, the first thing, let's say, if you haven't taught anyone before, is to revisit your training and then look at it from a third person perspective, from a more macro perspective. How would you actually structure your training and why do you do certain things? Because that itself will give you a better idea of how you can actually structure it for your students later on. So I think that's important. And from there, I start to dive into reading books. So books by Pavel, Dan John, and famous people like this. And it sort of actually helped me to conceptualize how I would program as well. And of course, yourself. So I've been following you for a very long time, and then I really like your philosophy as well, which is why like basically what you have done with Coaster has also a huge impact on how I actually structured my own training as well as my training in the group class setting as well. But yes.
Oh, love that. That's so awesome to hear. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, yes.
Where did your love for kettlebells come from? Because if someone wants to go onto your page, the Fitness Extremist, it is very kettlebell heavy. In fact, most of your posts, and it's clear that you have a real passion for it. Not only are you practicing it yourself, it's also integrated into a lot of your clients' training, which we can see. But there is like some deep knowledge and love for kettlebells that I can see there. Where did that start from?
Well, so let's start all the way from the start. I think first thing is I encountered kettlebells back when I was doing my cross country, rather my ultra marathon days. So when I was doing ultra marathon, I had this chronic ITB syndrome. And what happened is it didn't allow me to run the mileage that I would want to run. But of course, I need to be able to have a solution to actually go around it so that I can get ready for all my races. So one aspect is cross training, and of course the other aspect is strength training. So I chanced upon kettlebells together with body weight because I find that for kettlebells, for a student like myself, with limited resources, kettlebells provides me with a very versatile range of exercise choices, and also allows me to get stronger so that I can actually prepare myself for these races. So I've been dabbling into kettlebells from there. And then what happens is when I started Metamorfitus, I also used kettlebell as the main training tool, simply because it's portable and versatile. And from there, I want to learn a little bit more. I want to be able to teach it better because I find that it is a niche space that not everyone knows how to use them. And in 2018, I actually completed my StrongFirst Level 1 kettlebell certification. From there, dive deeper into kettlebell work, practicing a lot with it because, it's an awesome course. It is really hands-on, and basically it teaches you how to build strength with structure, teaches you how to build a technique as well. Then from there, I'm lucky enough to meet one of my mentors in the fitness industry, and it's really by chance. So, I've been uploading my videos, I've been snatching a lot as well, I've been swinging a lot, swinging heavy. And then this guy, he was a StrongFirst senior instructor. His name is Tim Elman. Fortunately, you can't find him on Instagram now. He has gone off the grid. What he does is he actually asked me on Instagram, saying, do you want some feedback on your snatches? So I was like, yeah, why not? So he gave me some tips, and then he actually explained to me why, he's snatching a certain way, and he shared that with me. So it's quite life-changing because the thing is, he asked me to bell down. Back then I was snatching with the 36, feeling top of the world, feeling really strong. But you know, he always come back to me and tell me, whenever I send him a video, he'll say, nah, it's too heavy, bell down. You're not getting the right technique. So I really listen to him, you know, just try, bell down, work on the technique that he taught me. And over time, I found out that, you know, my snatches has gotten a lot better. I don't have rib pumps as much, and my hips are moving a lot faster. So from then on, whatever they taught me just on this one skill actually translated over to other movements as well. So the way I see kettlebell snatches initially was, you know, you just want to snatch as heavy as possible. It's the best. If I can snatch the heaviest, I'm the strongest. But he opened my eyes to the other side of things, to the other perspective. Why? He asked me, why are you snatching the kettlebell? So the whole idea is you are snatching the kettlebell because you are trying to build power in your hips. So if you're snatching in a certain way, back then what we do is we'll swing the belt in between our legs, and then we'll do a high pull, and then we'll punch through. So it is actually a two-phase rocket, right? So the hips and then the arms. So what he has done is to remove the pull, because the whole idea for the snatch is you want to build power in the hips. You want to eliminate as much noise as possible from the arms, so that you're actually projecting the belt from below, in between your legs to overhead. So that's how it all started. And in order to do so, it means that, yes, you can't be using the same way as you are doing with the high pull, because you only have one rocket now rather than two. So I understood the reason why, and that whole idea, you know, brought about a lot of change. Even though I bell down, I find that my hips are moving a lot faster, and I continue to just explore the movements from there, and you start to see a lot of changes in the technique, and you start to understand why he's doing certain things. So that's how it all started, and that's how my technique has changed. And ever since then, I applied the same concept to the kettlebell press, to the cleans, to the swings, and to how I teach my students. You know, always ask why, and always try to, because of this form of practice, you also develop an eye for the movement itself. So last time I usually couldn't see certain things, but right now, because I dive deep into that one movement, and because it's a system, you start to see how they all are linked to each other. Yes.
Love it. It's kind of like it's that natural progression of an athlete, isn't it? Especially in the CrossFit space. It's like we have this checkbox approach to start, which is I just want to be able to do the movement, which basically means, you know, move from the starting position to the finishing position.
Yes.
And then a lot of people kind of, their journey with exploration of a movement stops there. And they just think, all right, cool. Well, I can kettlebell snatch now, and I can snatch to 32. Let's just go on to the next movement. And then that movement never really ever gets addressed again. It just gets kind of thrown into workouts and done under fatigue, or, you know, without much thought at all. What you've done there is you've started with that checkbox approach, and you've then come full circle and dived deep into it. And that has now opened up this whole new avenue where you're learning so much more about the movement, and it's not just move the kettlebell from A to B. Now you're looking at things like efficiency, different techniques, and that's, you know, kind of making you a bit of a specialist in the area.
Yes. So I think that is the key thing. Like, I feel that whatever that he has taught me is, I mean, it is about kettlebells, but I think he has taught me a lot more than just kettlebell with just one movement itself. You know, I think that for a lot of people, what you mentioned is right, Ed, is that, you know, once we have touched a certain movement, we maybe say we can snatch, and find that, hey, you know, I get it to move this way, and then it doesn't cause me any pain. I can do the movement, I can do the ward, and yeah, I'm good to go. You know, I will never dive in deeper into the movement again. But when I look at it, and I look at it, so I do follow the sport of CrossFit, is that a lot of times, in order for you to go further as an athlete, your technique has to be refined. That's one thing, because of course it encourages efficiency. And then secondly is being able to maintain that technique under fatigue, and also under heavy load. So if you can do that, and when we see the best athlete in the world, when they actually perform movements under fatigue, they actually look pretty nice. The deviation is little. So I think that is something that can be further addressed, and especially during off seasons or even like prep season itself, before we move into your in season. So
yeah. I think the way that I see it, and I also empathize with why a lot of CrossFitters do this, is just because the nature of the sport. There are so many things that we're trying to get good at, right? And so what it means that we can't afford to go too deep into any one thing, because that means that the other 100 things that we also need to improve technique on, and then build capacity on, and then build endurance and top end strength, you name it. Yes. All that stuff has to go kind of into maintenance mode or pause. And I do think, keeping this on the topic of kettlebells, is that kettlebells, whilst they are a part of every single CrossFit gym, they're probably an implement that has tested the least in the sport, right? So every CrossFit gym has it, but we've still never seen it come up in the CrossFit Open. Sometimes they come up at competitions like the semifinals, but basically they really haven't shown up in an online competition yet.
Yes.
However, which I think why is this conversation is relevant for this day and age, is that on the equipment list last year for the CrossFit Open, they did say that kettlebells would be used, and kettlebells are a must-have for people wanting to take part in the CrossFit Open. Then, of course, it didn't show up. But my hunch is that this year we're probably going to see a kettlebell show up. So let's talk about the kettlebell snatch. I know this is hard because it's a podcast and we don't have the visual representation of what we're talking about here. But given the fact that pretty much every single CrossFit gym, in fact, I would say every single CrossFit gym has kettlebells.
Yep.
What are the fundamental mistakes that we are generally making? What do you typically see when it comes to the kettlebell snatch?
Okay, so usually from what I see is that a lot of people are trying to yank the bell up. Because to be fair, CrossFit, you all work a lot with dumbbells and also barbells. So most of the time I had the privilege of working with CrossFitters, a little bit of CrossFit, some CrossFitters, and what I see is they do perform the movement as though as they are working with a barbell. So one of the common mistake is wrist. So when they bring the bell overhead, the wrist is bent. And what happens is, a barbell, you can actually get it this way because the load is going through the wrist. With the kettlebell, it doesn't work because the load is actually here.
Behind. Yeah.
Yes. So when you do this, it is actually pulling your wrist down. And it's with this wrist position, it's going to cause a lot of instability in the shoulders. So what we really want to do is when we snatch the bell, we want to keep a neutral wrist with the handles deep in the palm, like this. So what happens is, number one, I remove the weakest chain in the forearm when I'm overhead. When I'm keeping it here, the bell actually goes immediately into the wrist, bypassing the wrist into the forearms. Makes it a lot more stable, which is why you always hear people saying, "Oh, keep your wrist straight." And that's the reason why. A lot of times, even some of them, when they keep their wrist straight, the kettlebell handle is over here.
In front of the arm, yeah.
Yeah, so it's in line with the calluses. What happens, it's not wrong, but what happens is because the bell is here, there's this moment, it's pulling. So you need to use a lot of wrist, or rather your forearm strength, to pull it back into place. And it's going to burn your forearms out. When you throw the bell in between your leg and bring back up again, it's going to tax this a lot. Yes, so you always want this. This is one of the common mistakes when you do kettlebell snatches, not having that wrist position.
I was just before the podcast, I actually went onto your page and just watched you doing a few swings and just kind of like read a few of your most recent posts.
Yep.
So talk to me about that idea of like triple extension and driving a kettlebell up, which is what you were just talking about, kind of like using your hips versus swinging. Because I think here's some of my confusion, right? Because when I watch kettlebell, the sport, where people are cycling a snatch for a really, really long time, right? And it's the kind of slow, methodical movement. It always looks like it's more of a swing, you know,
Yep.
like they're going into like a hip hinge. Kettlebell kind of goes out then up overhead. When I
Yep.
watched you do it, it looks like much more of a vertical movement, right? So it looks like a lot more of an up and down versus a back and forth. Can you shed
Yep.
some light on that?
Okay. So maybe we'll split it up a little bit. Let's talk about it from the way I practice it first, and then maybe I'll dive a little bit into the sports side of things. But I need to put a disclaimer here. I don't actually do kettlebell sport. I mean, they are a different technique altogether, but I do observe them and I will try to break it down based on my own perspective. And, you know, to the listeners, those of you who are actually into kettlebell sport, you know, you can actually, you know, share your thoughts whether I'm actually making any sense or not, because I don't claim to be a kettlebell sport.
I almost want to pause you there because I actually think that a lot of our listeners are probably not aware that kettlebell is actually a sport.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
give us a quick rundown on what the actual sport of kettlebell looks like. What are you tested in?
Okay, so for kettlebell sport, there are a few different events. So the most famous one will be a kettlebell long cycle. So basically, it is a clean and jerk. So at a professional level, for men, they'll be using a pair of 32 kilos. What they are supposed to do is, for 10 minutes, they're supposed to do clean and jerks without setting the bell down at all for 10 minutes. By the end of 10 minutes, the person with the highest number of repetitions will win. So if you drop the bell on the floor, or rather you park the bell on the floor, your set is over. That's how it works. Same for the snatch. You start snatching with one arm for 10 minutes. You are only allowed to switch your arm once within the 10 minutes. So once you've done the switch, you can't switch anymore. So once you did the switch and you're done with your final arm, you set the bell down, that's going to be your score. So that's kettlebell
So
sport.
technically, you could snatch for 9 minutes on one arm and 1 minute on the other arm.
Yes, you can, but for a lot of pros, they actually will split it pretty evenly.
Yeah.
And they can get quite very, very good scores. Very, very marvelous scores. So yes. Okay. So that's kettlebell sport. They actually emphasize a lot more on efficiency and momentum. And the way I practice, so that's within the parameters of sport. Whereas for myself, you know, I train using the hardstyle method. And basically what it means is we use kettlebell as a tool for strength and conditioning. So we are using kettlebells to build fitness attributes, strength, power, things like that. So now that we know this too, we'll go into the S&C side of things first, which I actually specialize in. So we talk about the swing and we also talk about the triple extension. So when we talk about kettlebell swing, and most of the time when we do swings, we actually do it projected forward up to about chest height, at most chin. And the whole idea why it is because we are actually trying to build the posterior chain. So a lot of times for someone who is new coming into kettlebells, they don't really, I'm generalizing a little bit. Some of the beginners, they really won't know how to use their posterior chain. Most of them are more anteriorly dominant. So they probably can squat, but when you ask them to get into a hinge, they are not really great at that. And the swing itself is great at actually developing the posterior chain. So basically, when you project the bell out this way, it's almost similar to you doing a deadlift. So it's a very hip dominant hinge, projecting it this way. So the swings is good for building a posterior chain. It is great for beginners to actually build the posterior chain strength. But once they are able to have proficiency in that, we then transit into your cleans and also into your snatch, whereby this is where the vertical projection of force comes in. So when we shift the hinge, where we drop the hips a little bit, and then the knees come forward just a little bit, torso becomes a little bit more upright, we get a more vertical jump position. There is posterior chain recruitment and also a bit of anterior chain recruitment just because we want to bring the bell upwards.
So in simple terms, we're moving away from the deadlift a little bit and we're moving more to like a hybrid squat.
Yes, it's like a squat hinge.
Squat hinge, yeah.
Yes. So from there, we will be able to first learn the snatch. So because we are projecting the force up and down, and that from that position, it is actually an easier position to actually transfer over to triple extension, because triple extension is actually truly a vertical projection of force. With the kettlebell, we do that a lot with the jerks because it's up and down movement. But to do a snatch, to do a power snatch, it's a little bit tricky. So you need to be able to find that nice, nice balance point for you to actually drive out from, to utilize the triple extension, and also to make sure that there's enough vertical vector to actually bring the bell overhead. Yeah.
I love it. So I guess at the end of the day, there is no right or wrong.
No.
Right.
No.
So you might have a more posterior chain dominant athlete, maybe someone like myself who would much prefer to deadlift versus a squat. If I had high repetition kettlebell work within a workout, I'm probably going to bias and move a little bit more towards my hinge, knowing that it's a lot stronger and more enduring than my squat pattern. So I'm going to be more of a swing versus the more squat dominant athlete, maybe the athlete who's a bit more anterior chain biased, or who loves squatting more than deadlifting, might be a little bit more of a vertical drive. Is that right?
I think generally, I don't think that there is a right or wrong. I think it really has to depend on it's really up to the athlete, right? So if we talk about training, of course, during training, I would ask, the athlete to try out everything.
Yeah.
Right? So you're actually still building strength in various angles itself. But of course, when we are talking about the sport, when we are doing a WOD or we're in competition, being able to shift between all these actually would help, because when one chain is tired, you can switch to another chain, which brings to the point of just now you mentioned for the sport athletes. So sometimes I see sport athletes, while they get into a very deep hinge, what they do is they do this thing called the pendulum swing. So they'll get into a very deep hinge, your knees almost straight, but then what they'll do is they'll scoop.
Yeah.
So there is the knee flexion coming in. Then from there, with the knee flexion and the hip flexion, they drive upwards. So the way I see it, it is actually bypassing almost the same positions. It's just that
in a very similar way that we would Olympic lift, right?
Yes.
With a clean or snatch, we're in that above the knee position, which is almost like a Romanian deadlift, and then we're scooping back or uppercutting, moving back to power position and then moving up. I love the point that you made there, which is something that I deeply resonate with and talk about all the time in the sport of CrossFit, which is, if you only have one way to execute a movement, we would say that we kind of call it movement variability. If you've got low levels of movement variability in any movement, that means that once that movement goes, whether it's fatigue or technique, or, maybe there's other fatigue coming in from the other movements involved in a workout, then you have nothing to access. And I think the athletes who practice different variations and explore different techniques and develop strength and capacity in those different techniques, like you said, are the athletes who have a much greater choice of movement, many more tools in their toolbox to use in the middle of the workout. And to be able to transition and switch between them seamlessly is a result of, dedicated, intentional practice.
Yes. It's really true. One more thing that I want to add on to this as well is that, when I was practicing my snatches and things like that, you always think about you try to simplify whatever they are teaching and whatever they are practicing. So in the case of kettlebell lifts, we talk about kettlebell ballistics, the cleans and the snatches, initially to me, it's all about the elbows, keeping the bell close to the body. Then after some practice, I was like, yeah, maybe not. When I adjusted my hinge, like I explained to you, the hinge actually helps me to keep the elbows in. So the hinge is the key thing. But now, more recently, I'm actually toying the idea, and I feel that it's more all-encompassing. It helps you to tweak your technique a lot better, especially for yourself, if we are trying to access different chains, be it the hip dominant chain, the squattier chain, or the squat chain, is center of gravity. So when we talk about kettlebells, we want to keep the bell close to our center of gravity, not outside, sideways, not out this way. You want to keep it as close as possible. So let's say maybe at the start you can keep it really close, but maybe when you're tired, you need to get into your hip hinge, which projects the bell outwards, but you need to find a way to keep it close to make it efficient. And I think that if you go on that concept, I don't think you'll go wrong.
Yeah, I think that applies to so much. I love that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, question for you. Right, we can talk about kettlebells all the time. And you said at the start, you opted for kettlebells because of the ease of use and transportation. It was a cheap tool that you could use for your own strength conditioning. Why the kettlebell over the dumbbell?
That's a very good question. So, I mean, for dumbbells, they actually are versatile as well. The reason why I like the kettlebell is on top of all the strength lifts, your overhead presses, your jerks, things like that, we actually can do the swings and the snatches in a way whereby I pretty much like the feel of it. Yeah, it's almost as you're playing, you're able to play with the movement a lot more as compared to the dumbbell. But then again, disclaimer, I haven't used much of dumbbell. So to be fair, I can't compare these two. But when I first started this, that was the impression that I got.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that there is a lot more complexity to the kettlebells. So I think in terms of like having longevity with either dumbbells or kettlebells, you probably got more out of the kettlebell just because there are so many more technical nuances to it. If we compared, let's say, a dumbbell snatch to a kettlebell snatch, the general premise of the movement is the same, but given that on a kettlebell, you've got weights placed on one side, dumbbell, you've got a nice even placement of two. There isn't that many ways that you can tweak technique with a dumbbell. There's a lot of ways you can tweak technique with a kettlebell.
Yes.
So I'll back you up on that one, Jack.
Oh, yes. I have another point that I want to add as well. And I think that because kettlebells, other than being portable, another point that I want to make is also, I feel that kettlebells, I'm recently explored barbells as well, a lot more. But I find that in terms of kettlebell for beginners, I find that they are a lot more friendly to beginners. And I'll explain more. So let's say if I'm teaching...
Is that just versus the barbell, Jack? Or versus the dumbbell?
Oh, dumbbell as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll put it this way, like based on my own experience, I may be wrong, is that I find that, let's say I want to teach a hinge, I would be able to teach a hinge with more ease using the kettlebells, because firstly, the kettlebell itself is, if you use the right bell, it's actually high enough. And what happens is I'm able to actually tweak the height of the hinge according to the mobility requirements of that individual. That's one. And then second thing, in terms of the squat, I mean, we all do goblet squats. We can do it with the dumbbell, we can do it with the kettlebell, but of course the kettlebell itself also allows you to do the goblet squat. So just with one training tool, I'm able to work on these two movements for that same individual. And I think that's also the versatility of this tool, for a lot of individuals. So when I teach beginners, usually I will only need to bring one or two kettlebells down if I'm going to their space, rather than I need to bring a huge set of dumbbells around. So yeah.
And I would also say, you can still load up pretty heavy. If you got heavy kettlebells and you're doing things like dual kettlebell front squats, even dual kettlebell deadlifts, like you still have the ability to train, even for a strong guy or girl, top end strength with kettlebells.
Yep. It is possible, but of course, then
get them up.
Yes, then you got to really load them up, and if to a certain point, whereby I think then the specialization of barbells will actually come in a little bit more handy. So yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that. Did you do your barbell certification through
Strong First.
Strong First? Okay, let's talk about that.
Yes.
So Strong First are the guy who leads that, Pavel, right?
Yes.
Right, like Mr. Kettlebell, essentially.
Yes.
They have something called the Beast Tamer.
Oh, yes.
And I
Yes.
believe you are one of not many people who have completed the Beast Tamer. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean there is a list. I think it's about for men it's about just over 100 people, I guess.
103.
Oh, okay, 103. So yeah, I just done mine recently when I was doing my level 2 kettlebell certification in Italy. So that was when I done it. So for the Beast Tamer, it is a 48 kg single arm overhead strict press, a 48 kg pistol on either one of the legs.
See, I just wanted to pause you there because I read the standards
Yeah.
for the Beast Tamer. There's no way I'm getting straight press. Even the pistol. And I read the pistol standards. I was like, oh, I don't know if you actually have to do this on both legs. I thought you'd have to do it on one leg and swap. So it can be on either leg.
Yes, either leg.
Yeah. Continue.
And then the pull up.
Neck must touch the bar.
Neck. Not here. Here. Minimally. So yes. For the ladies equivalent, it will be an Iron Maiden. So Iron Maiden, basically all 3 lifts, but with a 24 kg kettlebell.
I think maybe I might just be able to do the Iron Maiden.
Yeah, you can try the 32 as well. The 32.
I'm not sure about the 32. So tell me, why is this something you were training for a while? Is this something you had your eyes on?
Yes. So I've been training for this for actually 4 years. 4 years. Wow. But okay, to be fair, for the Beast Tamer, while I've been eyeing for 4 years, I actually had the pistol and also the pull-ups nailed down. So back then, 4 years ago, I could only muster 2 reps with a 40 kilo for the strict press. Yeah. So what happens is from there, I did my preparation, I actually started pressing a lot. And from there, my press improved. It improved to a point whereby I was able to do multiple sets of singles with a 44. But then, I'm not making any progress. So in my last ditch effort, I was like, okay, I shall try to increase my body weight. So when all this was being done, up to April 2022, I was 73 kilos.
Wow, it's very impressive.
Yeah. So I told myself, okay, let's try. I need to get up to 80, which I never did. And I haven't gotten to 80 before, but I've gotten to 77 kilos, which was my heaviest. And, I managed to actually press the 48 by April. The main difference actually is the stability in my rack position. When I was 73 kilos, when I racked a 48, because it's so huge, I'm not stable. I can't be stable. All my energy is trying to get the belt to be stable in this position, and there's nothing left to go overhead. But when my weight went up by 2 to 3 kilos, when I racked, it actually felt stable enough for me to actually press it overhead. So that's one thing. And of course, on top of that, because the Beast Tamer needs to be done in a certification setting. So what this means is you either attend the certification as a student, as a participant, to attend the Beast Tamer Challenge, or you can actually go to the cert and apply to assist. That means you help to teach the course and also attend the certification. So I was there as a student. So I was prepared, prior to that, I actually gotten 2 reps with the 48, even one time with the 50, I practiced a lot of things. I tried to get myself as prepared as possible because I'm overseas. I probably am a little bit jet lagged. I need that bit of buffer. I practice command simulated press. So clean the belt up. I pause for 2 seconds. I shout go. I press, bring it down. All this was done. I practiced pressing after a snatch test as well, because I don't know when the Beast Tamer is going to be. So on that day, they announced that the beast tamer is going to be after lunch, which is after the recertification of the level 1 skill set, which means we have to do practice. We have to do a lot of swings practice, cleans practice, pressing practice, and then after that we test the swings, the cleans, the snatch, 5 reps on each arm, the press, 5 reps with the 24, double kettlebell front squats, 5 reps with a pair of 24s, and then we did a 5-minute snatch test, which we were supposed to get 100 reps with the 24. And by that time, with the testing and a lot of swing practice, my hamstrings were really sore. They were really sore. So when it comes to the beast tamer, the funny thing is, I was actually okay leading up to it. I was actually pretty confident about my press and my pull-ups, but I wasn't that confident about my pistol. And I didn't have to actually worry about the pistol, even leading up to it. So it is really the elements of unknown. But thankfully, you know, I managed to get through it. So all is good. But that was in the back of my mind all the while leading up to it.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely not ideal prep before
Yes.
an all-out test.
Yes.
The pistol also has to be done barefoot. Is that right?
Yes. So for my training, generally, I follow the strong first methodology. I do pretty much all my training barefooted. I snatch, I do my burpees, everything barefooted. The only thing that I do with shoes on will be running.
So ever since I've seen you on Instagram, you've never had shoes on training. You also have, it's awesome that your gym is outdoors as well. So like you've got AstroTurf laid out, right?
Yes.
You're pretty much always training Astro, which I'm super jealous of. One day we will also have that. But talk me through the ideas behind barefoot training.
So the whole idea for barefoot training is that, number one, you can actually feel the ground a lot better. So our foot, we have a lot of, basically a lot of nerves, endpoints that actually helps you with balance. So training barefooted actually, number one, helps you to find your balance a lot better. And also number two, because you're barefooted with the ground, you can actually generate and also direct force a lot better when you are moving through, your swings, your snatches, and even your presses. If you need to root yourself to the ground or wedge yourself against the ground, I feel that those are a lot better. Yeah, for the teaching perspective, it is also a lot better because you'll be able to see if the students' foot, whether they're in the right position, are their knees caving, are their ankles caving in, and you can do tweaks for that to actually make their movement a lot better. So I think that's the positive side of barefoot training.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I've actually recently moved to Vivo.
Oh,
Vivo
nice.
barefoots. So I mean, I'm not fully fledged barefoot yet, because otherwise I'd have no shoes on. But I bought my first pair of Vivos last year, and we now have set up a partnership with the gym where they have, every coach now has a pair of Vivos, which is funny because for the last year, most of the coaches have been ripping me for wearing Vivos because they think it's really unfashionable. And I'm like, listen, I'm beyond that point in my life of caring about what I look like. I actually just think they're super comfortable. But it's been really interesting this week, all of the team wearing their Vivos and commenting how weird it feels to be barefoot, specifically walking around streets and like feeling like drains and like bumps in the road and stepping on rocks, like, and being really freaked out by it, which has been interesting for me because I've been wearing them, pretty much most days for the last year and a bit, and have become very, very accustomed to them, that actually I really like training them as well. I think there are certain aspects of training that I probably wouldn't wear them in. So I probably wouldn't Olympic lift heavy in Vivos. Probably wouldn't be doing like high rep plyometrics, high rep jumping. Probably wouldn't wear Vivos for that. But pretty much everything else. And right now my training is a lot of it is static because I'm doing a lot of rehab. The Vivos have been awesome. And like I'm a big proponent, and I love training in them. I love the idea of training barefoot. And one day I have the dream of having an outdoor gym where I do pretty much all my training barefoot. So yeah, I just wanted to say, love that you're doing that.
Well, thanks. Yes. Looking forward to see the day that you actually open the outdoor gym as well, man.
One day. I mean, I do think maybe that's a good conversation though, because I think a lot of people would hear that and think maybe they should be training barefoot as well. And I think maybe just a little disclaimer to say that, it's definitely for people who've been training, let's say, with a lot of heel support, a lot of foot support, transitioning to barefoot training is a really aggressive jump.
Yes.
And like anything, like you need to prep the body to be able to be doing that. So if you don't have adequate range and things like your ankles, hips, and knees, and you want, you start loading up heavy squats and going barefoot, I would just say, you got to make sure you got the prerequisite, mobility first and foremost, and like definitely break them in, like ease into that transition slowly. Have you got any, I mean, given that you train a lot of people barefoot, are there any kind of like protocols or advice that you give to people transitioning to barefoot training?
Yes. So, okay. So for barefoot training, I think what you mentioned, Ed, is definitely right. If someone is wearing lifters and then they go barefoot, I don't think it's a good idea for them to go straight into heavy lifts. So let's say if they really want to go into heavy lifts, first thing is I think you can explore the idea of elevating their heels using a small little friction plates or some form of mat. Get them to try a little bit first. If they feel comfortable, gradually loading up from there will actually help to maintain the strength when transiting barefoot. But also on top of that, you have to work on your mobility aspect of things so that eventually you can remove that piece of support. So I think that itself would be of great help.
Yeah, totally agree. I read one of your posts recently talking about the role of the lats in overhead pressing.
Oh, yes.
And I love it. I was first exposed to that concept when I did the Strong Fit certification years ago. And it was definitely an idea that baffled a lot of students, where it's like, well, pressing something overhead, which is predominantly, the delts and the triceps in the majority of work. What role do my lats play in it? Would you shed some light, Jack, on the importance of lats for those looking to develop pressing strength?
Yes. So for pressing strength, I think the common misconception is that, when someone bring the weight to the rack position, the first thing that they want to do is they want to push it overhead. So what this does is, sometimes you'll activate a little bit of your upper traps. You're trying to push your deltoids. And while I won't say it's wrong, but it will not be able to actually help you to get a lot of weight overhead. If you want to practice good pressing mechanics, prevent yourself from getting a lot of traps ache or even impingement, usually what we'll try to do is we'll try to engage the lats. And what this will do is, number one, when you press overhead in this position, you are actually able to bring your humerus into the socket. So it actually makes a more stable pressing position. Number two, the lats is actually one of the 4 major neurogenerators of strength. So the other 3 will be your grip, your abs, and your glutes. So by firing this, the lats is probably the biggest muscle in your upper body. So by engaging this and pressing from here, you're actually generating a lot of tension to bring the weight overhead. And also number 2, by doing this to bring the weight overhead, it actually acts as a shelf for you to press off, versus if you're just hanging in the middle of nowhere, there isn't a stable platform for you to push off against. So I feel that is something that not a lot of people know, but once they are able to do that, it transits a lot better into other overhead movements as well, which includes your push presses and also your jerks. So
love it. Okay, so let's put that into simple terms. What we're saying is that when the kettlebells are racked in your position, in the front rack position, which could also be a barbell or dumbbells, anything as you're pressing overhead, is making sure the lats are engaged in that rack position. And really kind of, as we're pressing, we're still maintaining that engagement as we press.
It's almost as though as okay, so the thing is, the lats, they'll bring it down, but when you press,
They'll have to lengthen.
Yes, they will have to lengthen, and that is actually caused by the scapula actually opening up, and that will actually help to bring the arm overhead. But by doing so, you are not actually trying to elevate.
Shrug, yeah.
You shrug. Basically, it helps to keep your shoulder in a more stable position to press off weight. And one good way that I find helps to teach that is you can actually start by getting a student to stand up or be in a seated position, get them into this position whereby it is 90 degrees, there's a 90-degree angle. And what you want them to do is you want to visualize, you put your hand over here, ask them to push against it. So let's say I'm pushing against something, I visualize that I'm trying to push myself into the ground. Or for some case, it will be like, imagine there is a ceiling falling on top of you, and you're trying to wedge yourself in between. That would be the feeling that you're getting when you are pressing. Not so much that you're trying to push it up, but rather you're trying to push yourself into the ground.
Love it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so for those listening, Jack's basically putting his arms up in front of him, 90 degrees at the elbow, kind of like you're in a tripod position in a headstand, but standing upright. And imagine that you're resisting the ceiling coming down on you, and you will actually feel flat engagement just by putting yourself in that position.
Yes. And then slowly, you can actually bring it down lower and ask them to try the same thing and even lower to the point of the rack position, because this position is what a lot of people struggle to find the leg engagement. Most of them will be able to find it if it's slightly higher up. So you can start from slightly higher up, building weight downwards, and it will work quite well.
Love it. Jack, what are you working towards right now?
Sorry?
What are you working towards right now, personally? You've done the beast tamer. Surely it's time to retire from kettlebell and move to something else, no?
No, actually, not really. I'm still very happy. For myself right now, I'm still diving quite deep into the snatch side of things. I do have certain snatch goals that I want to hit. Most recently, I've done it with the 20 kilos. I'm actually trying to hit 150 in 5 minutes with the 20, but I only managed 144. So working on that. But other than that, I'm not really seriously working towards, say, a Secret Service snatch test. Basically, it is 200 reps in 10 minutes with the 24 kilos for snatches. I'm just working towards it loosely. But right now, I'm really more of in a phase of exploration with the movements. I'm actually exploring the endurance aspect of snatching using the technique of the hardstyle snatch. And the whole idea why is because I just want to see if there is that transferability to the endurance aspect. So when I'm able to actually snatch with the hardstyle hinge, I can build endurance in that specific hinge, and seeing how it actually carries over to other aspect of things. So that's mainly what I'm actually doing right now.
I love that you're using yourself as a guinea pig.
Yes.
I love that I'm very much the same. I love picking an experiment, running through it for however many weeks, seeing if there's any correlation or results, and then having those tools to then maybe share with other people, or maybe just dispose of them because you feel like I didn't get what I wanted to get out of that. But I think that's a really great thing that coaches could do more of.
Yep. It just allows you to dive deeper into your craft and explore new training methods as well. So yeah, that's the thing that I'm looking at.
Yeah, and I think you don't have to be a great athlete to be a great coach, but putting yourself through the process, it just allows you to empathize with the client, right? Knowing that number one, that client knowing that you've been through the same process, and number two, knowing that you've been through the same process that they're going through, allows you to provide so much more value, whether it's through support, understanding, or even just having the tools to actually help them get better.
Yes, I agree. Like, I think that okay, well, I have spoken to people, and some of them say, to be a coach, you need to be you need to have one certain things, you need to have be of a certain standard. While I agree that you need to be of a certain level of strength, not necessarily a super high level, but just so that you can carry yourself to show that, you know, you're actually practicing what you preach. But also, like what you mentioned, you know, like you've actually gone through the experience, so you can empathize with your students, and, you know, to help guide them through those sticking points, which are often not mentioned in the manual, in any manuals for the matter. So it is something that's invaluable to you, and, you know, it will actually elevate your credibility and also your skill set as a coach. One thing also I want to share more is also that on top of that is, I think the role of a coach is really one who, to me, I see it right now, that you want to be able to teach someone or coach someone to a level that surpasses you. That's what I feel like. One of my goals in my coaching career is that, you know, I want to be able to build people, your normal daily working people who has an interest in fitness, build them up to a point whereby they are actually stronger than you. I think then that would be the ultimate end goal. One thing that's shared to me by my mentor as well, he has a huge impact on me, is that, you know, he mentioned that as a coach, you know, the best thing that you can do is to make yourself obsolete as fast as possible. By being able to do so, it shows your ability to teach, and so shows your understanding of how you can bring someone, identifying weaknesses and being able to address each individual's weaknesses to bring them to that level as quickly as possible.
I love that.
Yes.
I think we always talk about that, and I think we're saying the same thing. We use the term autonomy, right?
Yes.
Which is giving the client autonomy, which basically means that they no longer need you.
Yep.
And the way that we do that is through, like you've talked about this whole episode, talking about the why, right? Educating them how they can do it themselves. John Berardi always, his quote will always ring out to me, the guy from Precision Nutrition. And he says, you know, be a guide on the side, don't be a sage on the stage.
Yes.
Right. So the sage on the stage is the person always telling orders, barking instructions. The guide on the side is there, you know, doing the work with them. Or another quote I always think about is coach next to them, not in front of them.
Yes.
So I totally love that idea and that philosophy. I think it's a philosophy that a lot of coaches find very hard. And I have to admit, when I first started, that was something I found very hard. In fact, there's two things you said which I found hard. Number one was developing your athletes to be better and stronger than you. Because as a young coach who was exploring chasing very similar goals to that of my clients, which was to be the best CrossFitter that I could be, by being the strongest and being the fittest in the room, I thought gave me credentials that I needed to be the best coach. So if people were stronger than me or fitter than me, that would mean that I would no longer be respected as a coach. Truth be told now is, you know, I still follow the same program as a lot of our clients online do, and I have not been at the top of the leaderboard for at least 4 years. So that realization has very much come to me, and without even necessarily thinking about it, that has just kind of been the evolution of me and changing the goals. And I think the second part is the idea of autonomy, and, you know, giving our clients autonomy by teaching them how to do it. So essentially you become obsolete. I think that's quite it's a strike on the ego for a lot of people who would fear that if the client no longer needs them, then what is their purpose as a coach? What do you think?
I think that well, to me, like, first thing is, I feel that is the best thing that you can give to the client, is to teach them how to fish. But usually, let's say, I mean, to me, the way I see it is, let's say if someone comes to you to learn how to fish, and let's say if they're done with it, and they want to train on their own, I think that is just, you know, the intention of why they choose to work together with you. But of course, if they continue to further train with you and try to find out more about your training philosophy and wanting to find out a lot more, then that itself would be a testament to probably say that, they probably enjoy and share the same training philosophy as you and want to continue to learn more. And which in that case, I think that your own progress as a coach, your own progress in the fitness or rather in the coaching industry will have to evolve to provide a lot more value as well so that they can continue to grow. I think that there's a reason why they continue to stick with you for various reasons. It could be with the community, it could be because you continue to provide a lot more value to them. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, we have a role. We have a role as coaches, and if we want to be, a part of the journey for a really long time, then we have to constantly be evolving as well, because they're always going to rise to the new level of challenge that we can set them.
Yeah, I also want to mention that, like, whatever that we spoke about, in terms of let's say your students getting stronger than you, things like that. I'm human too. I will have that ego here, but of course for me, I think on the biggest side of things, from a coach to student perspective, definitely you who don't want those who train under you or train with you to succeed, right? That's one thing. And of course, on the other side of things, having a stronger community will also push you in your own individual endeavors as well. So seeing them improve also helps to actually keep you motivated as well to train. So yeah, that's the way I see it. So it's actually comes full circle.
Yeah, I love it. Jack, this has been a great conversation. I knew it would be. Thank you for sharing all your insights, wisdom, and experiences, especially around the idea of kettlebells, but also your experience as a coach. There's been lots of golden nuggets in there, and I really appreciate you taking time out your day to share that with us.
Thanks for having me, Ed. It's a pleasure to be sharing on this podcast. I've been a huge fan of the Process podcast, so I do actually listen to your episodes as well.
I really appreciate it, buddy. All right, until next time.
All right, thanks, Ed. See you.